What's up, guys? On the screen are the current 8 champions in the UFC, but I wanted to ask a question. What if every single champion vacated their belt? Who would fight for the title and who would win those matchups? That's what I want to talk about today. I think the group of champions we have right now in the UFC, from Merab to Bilal to John Jones, are some criminal champions. I'll be honest, maybe I'm just hating, but I wanted to look on the wild side, as they say, and see if these guys all vacated their belts, who would be next up for the title, who would the UFC book, and who would win those matchups. So let's get right into it, starting off with the flyweight division. I think that they would put together Manel Kape versus Brandon Royval. Now, a lot of people might say they would do Brandon Moreno maybe instead of Royval. Instead of Manel Kape, Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval. But they've already fought twice. It's 1-1, sure, but I think the UFC would go for a fresh matchup, and they know that Kape has the ability to be a star because of his mic presence. He's funny at press conferences. He says some wild stuff on the mic. And for Royval, I mean, he beat Brandon Moreno, so he would definitely be more deserving of a title shot than Brandon Moreno. I know Moreno just fraud-checked Albazi, but let's be real. Royval beat Brandon Moreno earlier this year. So I think they would do Manel Kape versus Brandon Royval. As far as the matchup goes, who do I think would win? Now, Brandon Royval, I feel like, would be the underdog in this fight because people are going to be riding high on that last performance that Manel Kape had. He looked incredible, probably his best performance to date. But let's not forget, people forget, man, Brandon Royval had an absolute crafty vet performance against Tatsuro Taira, took his O, showed that, hey, I'm the top dog in this division. I'm the guy to beat. And yeah, Brandon Royval's #1 contender. So in this fight, it depends on what version of Manel Kape shows up. If the version versus Muhammad Mokaev shows up, then Brandon Royval is going to destroy him. But I'm going to assume that the best Manel Kape versus the best Brandon Royval, and I honestly think that Manel Kape would piece up Royval on the feet to maybe like a TKO. I think that Manel Kape is really good on the feet, and he would be able to neutralize Brandon Royval in the striking, and I think he'd be able to avoid the grappling exchanges maybe. Royval is not the most dominant grappler in the world. He can get some takedowns and, you know, make some transitions on the ground and such, but he's not the most dangerous grappler. He's been submitted himself before. So I think Manel Kape would piece Brandon Royval up with clean striking and just maybe I'd pick him by like a third-round TKO, just wearing on Brandon Royval and eventually getting the TKO, getting Raw Dog out of there, and then Manel Kape would be the new flyweight champion, which I do think that if he became the champion, he would be the most exciting flyweight champion because he just, like I said, he's electric on the mic. He's always saying some wild stuff. And yeah, man, I like Brandon Royval. His nickname Raw Dog is one for the ages, but I would prefer Manel Kape, and I do think Manel Kape would win that matchup. Hot take. They are scheduled to fight, so it's interesting that I put this on as the fight to make for the title if Pantoja was to vacate. They are scheduled to fight, and I am going to be picking Kape in that matchup. I'm talking like this matchup isn't happening. I completely forgot it got announced. Either way, let's get on to the Bantamweight division. Who do I think would win? I mean, who do I think would fight for a title if Merab vacated? I think they would do Petr Yan versus Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, a lot of people might think that they would throw Sean O'Malley in there because he's a big star, but it's hard to give a guy who's coming off a loss a title shot. I know it's Sean O'Malley, and he has quote-unquote star power, even though he really doesn't. But I think that the UFC would book Petr Yan versus Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, who would win? I think that Petr Yan's always going to struggle against these really good wrestlers in the division. He struggled against Aljo, who's a good wrestler. Aljo got the body triangle on him multiple times, or he's a good back taker. He struggled really bad against Merab, who just spammed takedowns the entire fight. And although I do think that Petr Yan would do better against a guy like Umar, I do think that Umar Nurmagomedov would beat Petr Yan by like a 48-47, 49-46 decision. It wouldn't be as dominant as the Merab fight was. Petr Yan would be more competitive in moments, but I don't think he'd be able to take Umar down with one of his trips. And I think Umar's kicks would keep Petr Yan away and keep him at boxing range. And I think Umar would make Petr Yan very nervous of the takedown. If you watch Petr Yan's fights these days, he seems very nervous that a takedown's coming. Merab literally makes Petr Yan fight like he saw a ghost. I'm joking, guys. I love Petr Yan, and there was nothing I want more than him to get back to the belt. But with Umar and Merab at the top of the division, it's very unlikely we see another Petr Yan championship run. And it's sad to say, man, because he's one of the most exciting and ice cold champions there is. He's just such a savage, Russian savage. insane boxing. He just like spends too much time in the fight downloading data. And I think a guy like Umar would be able to just neutralize his boxing with the kicks, keep him on the outside, and even get some takedowns on him and kind of just keep him guessing. And I could see Petr Yan being very tentative, lose the early rounds, and maybe he wins like the 4th and 5th round or just one of those rounds and it's not enough. And then you see Umar Nurmagomedov beat him by like a 49-46 or a 48-47 decision to become the new Bantamweight champion. So yeah, this is the matchup I think they would put on, and this is who I think would win. Let's get on to the Featherweight division. I think for Featherweight, they would put on Diego Lopez versus Volkanovski. And my lord, would I be scared for Volkanovski, because I want Volkanovski to win his next fight. Despite Diego Lopez being my favorite fighter, I would want Volk to win this fight. I would just want him to, you know, beat Diego Lopez by a decision, a dominant decision. But people would argue that you maybe can throw a guy like Movsar Evloev in there, who's 9-0 in the UFC. But Movsar, man, he's been looking mid recently. I know he's 9-0, and you could argue he deserves a title shot because he beat Diego Lopez, arguably. But that was a close fight, and you could argue Diego Lopez has an argument to win that fight, even though it depends what you value. Submission attempts or ground control. Either way, speaking of the matchup of Diego Lopez versus Alexander Volkanovski, it really depends on Alexander Volkanovski's chin. Assuming that Volkanovski can still take a decent shot and Diego Lopez can't just crack him and put him out cold in the first round, I would 100% pick Volkanovski to piece up Diego Lopez and maybe even get a TKO at some point. But Volkanovski, even though he's 36 years old, this guy's still one of the best strikers on the planet. And I think that Volkanovski could thwart the takedowns of a Diego Lopez. If he can stop the takedowns of Makhachev to some degree, he can stop the takedowns of Lopez and not have to worry about the jiu-jitsu. And Volk is a really hard guy to submit either way. I don't think Lopez will be able to submit him. So, and do I really see Diego Lopez beating Volk in the striking to a decision? There's no way. Unless he knocks Volk out, I think this fight would be a Volk striking masterclass. I think Volkanovski would piece up Diego Lopez on the feet, jab his face to pieces, keep him on the outside, and yeah, man, he would just put a striking clinic on Diego Lopez. But man, imagine if Diego Lopez just lands that one hook on Volk's chin and puts him out cold despite getting dominated. That would be brutal to watch. But yeah, I would pick Volkanovski to beat Diego Lopez by a 49-46 decision, 4 rounds to 1. Maybe a Diego Lopez cracks Volk in one round and he wins that round, but Volk survives and he wins every other round, outstriking him. A Volkanovski masterclass, wins the belt, one of the most feel-good moments of the year. Then he invites us all to the barbecue. Can you imagine? Let's get on to who I think would fight for the title in the lightweight division. If Islam were to vacate, I think they would do the Arman and Charles rematch. Now, there's not really any other fighters at lightweight that deserve a title shot. Like, there really isn't. Poirier and Gaethje don't deserve it. Beneil Dariush is on 2 losses. Moicano, not ready. Chandler, 2-4 in the UFC. So it's like, who else would get the title shot? No one. It would be Charles versus Arman rematch. It was a really close fight the first time. But who do I think would win? Especially after seeing Charles's last performance against Michael Chandler. Or who do I think would win? Arman Tsarukyan or Charles Oliveira? I'd pick Arman Tsarukyan again, especially in a 5-rounder. I know people were saying that, man, if that fight was 5 rounds, what happens with Charles and Arman? I'm picking Arman to win just because Charles Oliveira is taking a lot of damage. He's getting older. Arman's the younger guy, and Charles is always going to struggle with these wrestler-type guys. He just will. Like, Arman's not afraid to get in Charles's guard and just get on top of him and hit him with ground and pound. And I think Arman's good enough on the ground himself to avoid submissions and not get submitted. I know he got caught in a couple submissions against Charles, but they weren't finished, and Arman got out of the submission as soon as the fight was over, and it was good. I know a lot of people cope and say Charles beat Arman the first time. I didn't see that. I thought Arman won clear. I thought it was a clear win for Arman Tsarukyan. It was a very close fight, but close fights are not robberies, and I don't think it was a robbery. I think the rightful guy got the decision. And I think in a 5-rounder, a lot of people argue that Charles would win. I would argue that Arman would win in the 5-rounder. I don't think Arman has bad cardio, and yeah, man, I feel like he would pace himself well against Charles, do what he needs to do in the grappling and the striking. Arman has underrated striking. A lot of people would probably think that Charles would just piece him up in the striking and maybe even knock him out or submit him, but Arman Tsarukyan, I don't think he's ever been submitted in his entire career. I could be wrong, but I don't think even the grappling wizard that Charles Oliveira is, I don't think he's ever going to be able to get a submission against these Russian-type grapplers. They're just, I don't know, positionally, they're just too smart and too good to get submitted by a triangle or like a guillotine or any of that. I don't think Charles is ever going to catch that. I mean, when's the last time Charles landed a triangle on anybody, It's been a long time. Charles is like a rear naked choke or a guillotine. Those are his submissions he typically gets, not a triangle or an armbar. He almost got an armbar against Ferguson. But I would pick Arman Tsarukyan to beat Charles Oliveira probably by maybe 48-47. Maybe Charles steals some rounds, maybe a 49-46. I don't see a finish in this fight. I think it'd be another decision. These guys are just too good. If anybody gets finished, I would think it'd be Charles, because Charles has been finished a lot of times. I'm not trying to be a Charles hater, guys. Listen, I love Charles Oliveira, but when we're talking about the guys from that region of the world, the Georgians, the Russians, Charles just struggles against those guys. Islam and Arman, there's just a hard style matchup for Charles, and it really negates his entire fighting style. And remember, guys, Arman Tsarukyan is not Michael Chandler. Let's just say that. Let's get on to the welterweight division. Who would the UFC put on for a title fight if Belal Muhammad were to slip on a banana peel and vacate his title? I think they would do Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Jack Della Maddalena. I think this would be the fight the UFC would make. And why would they make it? Well, I don't think they're going to give it to Usman, who's on a 3-fight losing streak. I don't think they would give it to Leon Edwards, who's on a 1-fight losing streak and just lost to Belal for the belt. Can't give it to Ian Gary because he just lost to Shavkat. Maybe you could do Buckley versus Shavkat, but I think that Jack Della Maddalena has maybe, I know he hasn't fought recently, but he's earned his shot at the title in my opinion. I think Jack's been he's been injured, and that's why he hasn't been fighting. But hopefully we see Jack next year. But if he were to come in, and first of all, if they gave Usman a title shot versus Shavkat, that would be brutal because Usman's on a 3-fight losing streak. I think that'd be the first time anyone in the UFC history who was on a 3-fight losing streak got a title shot. That would be insane. Obviously, you do a fight versus the new guard of the welterweight division, Jack Della Maddalena versus the Shavkat. They want to get rid of the Usmans, and they want to get rid of the Leon Edwards. These guys are boring. When Usman's not boring, Usman's just getting old, and he's not going to have any longevity. If he wins the belt back, it's going to make the division look bad because he's old and he has no legs. And if Leon wins the belt, well, we all know the title's getting defended once every 12 months. But talking about the matchup, who would win? Shavkat versus Jack Della Maddalena. Now, people forget, man. Jack Della Maddalena was low-key getting pieced up by Gilbert Burns in that fight before he found that finish in the third. Now, he was doing all right, but Gilbert Burns was having a lot more success against Jack Della Maddalena than I would like to see. And I know Shavkat just got half his aura stolen by Ian Gary. So this would be such an interesting style matchup because it's like Jack Della Maddalena has the insane boxing skills on the feet. His striking is so crisp and so pretty, but then Shavkat, and Shavkat doesn't have the best offensive wrestling. So if Shavkat can get it to the ground, is Shavkat's striking good enough to get a guy like Jack Della Maddalena to give respect on the feet? Man, this is such a close fight. And honestly, guys, after seeing both their last performances and just in general, this is a hot take, man. I probably would go Jack Della Maddalena just because I think he would be able to avoid the takedowns of Shavkat. Hey, listen, if Ian Gary can not get taken down, I think Jack Della Maddalena can not get taken down. I know that's maybe MMA math or a cope, but I think I would favor Jack Della Maddalena to be able to maybe get a couple knockdowns on Shavkat because Shavkat he doesn't move his head whenever he's fighting. And a guy like Jack Della Maddalena with the boxing skills and just crisp combinations and the accuracy, I feel like he could clip Shavkat on the chin. And maybe he won't put him out, but maybe he'll drop him in moments, which will win him that round. So I don't know, man. This is such a hard fight to predict because of the stylistic matchups and their recent performances. Who knows what could happen? But I'd pick Jack Della Maddalena by maybe a 48-47 decision or even a split decision. This fight's back and forth war. They both knock each other down in moments, but Jack had the better moments. And Shavkat can't get a takedown because his wrestling's not the best. And yeah, I don't think Jack would get submitted if it went straight to the ground. He's shown that if it goes to the ground with a guy like Gilbert Burns, he can hold his own. So, yeah, let's get on to, I think it would be Jack Della Maddalena by a really close decision. A war this fight would be. I think this would be an instant classic. As long as Shavkat doesn't hold him up against the fence and Nias died, that would piss me off. Either way, let's get on to the middleweight division. If Dricus du Plessis were to fall off a mountain and they were like, UFC was like, yo, we got to find a new fight, you already know. Khamzat Chimaev versus Sean Strickland. There's not really anybody else that would fit in at middleweight to get a title shot. These would obviously be the two highest deserving. I mean, who are you going to say? Cal Barajo? No way. Izzy? No way. Whitaker's out of there. None of those guys deserve a shot. And man, let me tell you, I'm going to keep this dry, cut, and clear. Khamzat Chimaev would run through Sean Strickland. He just would. What is Sean Strickland going to do to like threaten Khamzat Chimaev? He has no knockout power. He throws jabs and teeps for 5 rounds. We all know that. He's going to go to war for you freaking guys. And he's going to jab and teep for 5 rounds. Let's be real. That's what's going to happen. But you're going to have Khamzat. And these guys have trained together. And I know that training is not indicative of what would happen in a real fight. But these guys have trained together. And Khamzat has repeatedly said that he ragdolled Strickland in the training and easily submitted him. And I've never heard once Strickland deny this claim. So, not to mention, Strickland's been taken down. Was he taken down by Abus? Maybe, but he was taken down by DDP. Fair enough, DDP's good. He's been taken down before in his career. He has really good get-ups, as they call it, but he's never fought a guy with grappling like Khamzat Chimaev. He just happened. I think if Khamzat gets Strickland down, we're going to see that Strickland's low-key good grappling is going to get exposed, and I think that Khamzat would choke with Strickland out in the first round. I do. I think Khamzat would not have to worry about any danger versus Strickland. There's literally no danger. He doesn't have knockout power. He doesn't throw head kicks. He doesn't throw flying knees. So Khamzat could literally be in this fight free of worry. And if Strickland came forward with his little jab and teep session, Khamzat would be like, haha, good one. Shoot under him for it, get a double leg, get him to the ground, take his back, and I think he would either face crank him or choke him out, and he would be the middleweight champion of the world. I know that's a casual take to say that Khamzat just chokes out everybody, but until I see otherwise, especially against a guy like Strickland who just doesn't have that danger factor, I would 100% have to favor Khamzat Chimaev to submit Sean Strickland. I don't think that's that crazy of a take. Let's get on to the light heavyweight division. If Alex Pereira were to retire tomorrow, who would replace him to fight for the title? The two guys, in my opinion, would be Magomed Ankalaev versus Anthony Smith. Now, on paper, Anthony Smith obviously deserves a title shot. He's just put in an insane resume at light heavyweight. I don't really see who else besides Magomed Ankalaev would deserve a shot more than him. I'm joking, guys. I think the UFC would do Jamal Hill versus Magomed Ankalaev. And the reason I think that is because Jamal Hill has been beefing and talking smack to everybody. So I think for a pay-per-view, it might sell because a lot of fans want to see Jamal Hill get shut up again. So even though he arguably doesn't deserve it, well, he doesn't deserve it. He's coming off a knockout loss to Pereira. That maybe the next guy on a win streak they would do would be like Carlos Alberg, but they definitely wouldn't do Jan Blachowicz because they already had a fight, him and Ankalaev, and it was a stinker that ended up in a draw. So I think the UFC would probably do Jamal Hill versus Magomed Ankalaev, and I don't know, man, who would win this fight? I think Ankalaev would beat Jamal Hill pretty soundly. Jamal Hill is okay. He has solid boxing, but outside of that, what does Jamal Hill really have besides a beer belly? Magomed Ankalaev has clean striking. He has knockout power as shown. He's knocked out a bunch of guys in the UFC. He's got a flying knee KO. He's KO'd Johnny Walker. He's KO'd Jan Kutalaba. Like, he's went toe-to-toe with guys like Rakic. Like, Magomed Ankalaev has shown that he is the most elite light heavyweight, arguably in the world, even over Alex Pereira. But they haven't fought yet, so you can't say that. But if you're looking at a guy like Jamal Hill, very one-dimensional, if Magomed Ankalaev truly wanted to, he could take the fight to the ground against a Jamal Hill. What has Jamal Hill shown in the grappling? You know, he's been submitted by Paul Craig. But outside of that, Jamal Hill doesn't really have anything on the ground. Magomed Ankalaev, at the very least, has wrestling. Do I think he has jiu-jitsu? It's hard to say because he's never submitted anybody. But he's proven he can take the fight to the ground if needed. So I think that Magomed Ankalaev, honestly, would beat Jamal Hill in the stand-up. And maybe if Ankalaev was getting a little hairy in the stand-up with Hill, he would just shoot a takedown, take Hill down, keep him guessing, and then maybe Hill gets back up, and then he just is tentative to strike with Ankalaev because he's scared about another takedown. So I think Magomed Ankalaev would finish Jamal Hill by like a third-round KO. That's what I think. I think Jamal Hill will be feeling good on the feet, feeling great. Then you're going to see Ankalaev start shooting some takedowns, making him feel tentative. And eventually, he's going to condition Jamal Hill to put that chinny chin on the silver platter, and boyo! Magomed Ankalaev is going to take his soul. And then we're going to see Jamal Hill go on a coping tour about how the ref messed him up or stopped the fight early. But either way, this is the fight I think we would see if Alex Pereira were to retire tomorrow. And I think Magomed Ankalaev would be the new champion. Let's get on to the heavyweight division, the last one. Who would fight for the heavyweight title? Cyril Gane versus Tom Aspinall. Now, this is I know that Cyril Gane just got a robbery win over Alexander Volkov, but there's no way that they're going to give Volkov a title shot over Cyril Gane if John Jones were to decide he's not fighting again. They're going to do Cyril Gane because Volkov already lost to Aspinall. So this will be a fresh matchup we've never seen. And I know we hate seeing Gane get repeated title shots. He's already fought for the title 2 times, and he's fought for an interim belt. So it's like Cyril Gane, despite having like maybe 8, 9 fights in the UFC, has fought for the title 3 times, which is insane. He would get another title shot, but it's a fresh matchup. Tom Aspinall's never beaten this guy. It'd be a good way to build Tom's resume. And yeah, man, Tom smoked everybody else. So who else would there be? Maybe if Volkov were to get another win, he could get it. But Cyril Gane versus Tom Aspinall, who do I think would win? Well, I think Tom Aspinall would literally run across the octagon, take Cyril Gane down, and twist him into a pretzel. I'm not even kidding. Do I think he would knock Cyril Gane out? Probably not. He probably would take the path of least resistance, which is taking down Cyril Gane, because Tom Aspinall is going to be bigger than Cyril Gane. He's going to be faster. He's going to be stronger, in my opinion. He's going to have way better BJJ. And maybe in the kickboxing, I do think Cyril Gane has the advantage. But in pure boxing range, Tom Aspinall is going to be dangerous and have the advantage. But in pure kickboxing, I think that Cyril Gane might be able to school Tom Aspinall on the feet just because he's really good in that area. But Cyril Gane, let's be real, guys. He's not a knockout threat. Tom Aspinall can put his little chin straight up in the air and have zero worry against Cyril Gane. Who's Cyril Gane KO'd without landing like a 50-punch combination? Every guy he has got a TKO on. He's at the well on, and eventually he gets him out of there after just landing endless shots. I don't think Tom's that clueless on the feet where he would get to that point. I think Tom Aspinall would maybe fill out on the feet a little bit for like 1 or 2 minutes against Gane, shoot a takedown, and then Tom would probably just get him out of there with a submission, or he'd ground and pound TKO him. And Tom Aspinall would show why he's the most dangerous heavyweight in the world. I thought this would be fun, guys, just going through all the UFC weight classes and talking about if the champions were to disappear tomorrow, what 2 fighters would fight for the title, who would win, and how. Listen, the analytical side of things and why fighters will win has never been my strong suit. I struggle with that kind of stuff, so I tried my best to give my takes on who would win and why they would win. If I'm an absolute casual bum of a ding-dong ting, let me know in the comments. Check out my other video, guys. I post a video every single day. I also stream every day. I really appreciate all the support recently. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. And yeah, man, subscribe if you're new. Do all the good stuff. Support your boy, and I'm out. Peace.